I wanted to have a chance to ask you about your career and your choices, and to give a little bit of background. Dr. Tony Lazzara is here with us. Dr. Lazzara was a prestigious pediatric intensivist at Emory University before he made a life decision to move to Peru and work with children who did not have the resources to access medical care. And he's spent his career since then working with the children. And I would love to hear your story, Dr. Tony.
Well, okay. As you said, that I was at Emory University in pediatric. It was neonatal intensive care. I'm a neonatal. It's my subspecialty, neonatology. And I had been there for about 10 years. I started in 1972, 73. I had been there for 10 years. And in 1982, myself, a colleague, her husband, and a friend, we decided we wanted to travel to East Asia, and we decided I don't know why, but we decided on India. And we started off in Calcutta, which was, of course, very shocking to us. We had sort of steeled ourselves as to what we were going to see, but you can't steel yourself against something that we saw. And we were just, very much impressed with the extreme poverty that we saw. Children in the streets. We saw children that had been maimed by their parents so that they could be better beggars. And so I contrasted that with what I was doing as a neonatal intensivist, taking care of babies that weighed 1 pound, some of them, surrounded by $200,000 to $300,000 worth of equipment. Most of these infants, at least at that point in time, this was in the early 80s, many of those infants, if they did survive, and most of them did not survive, but if they did survive, would be damaged, neurologically damaged. So I just started thinking about what I was doing there and what I could be doing elsewhere, helping disadvantaged children. And then too, in my background, of course, I went to Catholic grammar school, Catholic high school, Catholic college. And of course, the missions were always being touted and collections were always being done. And we had missionaries coming to talk to us about their work and that type of thing. So that was really always in the back of my mind, but I had sort of put it off because had a great job at Emory. We were doing very exciting research. I was tenured at Emory. So I sort of put those thoughts in the back of my mind and went forward at Emory. But then, of course, they resurfaced again after I tripped to India. So I returned to Emory, and it was an extremely difficult decision to make for the reasons I just said. It was a good job. I had lots of friends who were doing very good research, very exciting research on brain hemorrhage in premature infants, which is common. At least it was then. It's probably less common now with more advanced technologies. So it took me about maybe a year before making the final decision. The other problem that I had, of course, is my parents were aging. I was 3 hours away from them by plane, Atlanta to Tampa, which is where we lived. So all of those things came together, but then I decided in the end that this was something that I wanted to do. It was something that I needed to do. So I resigned at Emory. I sold my house and sold my car. And on April the 9th of 1983, I landed in Peru, which had just had severe flooding, no electricity, no water. And they put me in a house way in the back of the property where I was going to work that had an outhouse with a rat in it. So that was my introduction to Peru. So I stayed with that group. These were called the Missionaries of the Holy Apostles. It was a Catholic order that had a house a home actually for disadvantaged adults. We built a pavilion for children, and I stayed with that group for 4.5 years, but then decided that I would do better on my own because there were too many foreigners. We had different ideas about how to run things. There were Northern Europeans and Canadians and myself, and we were always in conflict. And the patients knew it, and they took advantage of it. So I decided that I needed to be on my own. I looked around for a house, and about maybe 10 miles from where I was working, there was a very nice 4-story house, which I bought in 1987. And with that, we were broke. We had no money after we bought the house. But then the community came together. Some Catholic schools in Lima for the wealthy also supported us. My father went to the parish priest and said, my son needs help. Whatever the parish donates, I'll double. So with that, we were able to get going. And then I started a newsletter, which I sent out 4 times a year. And that's how that's how we've survived, with people helping us. Peruvians have been very good to us. Almost all of our food is donated. They drop off sacks of rice and sugar and beans and that type of thing. Sometimes they give us chicken and meat and what have you. So with that, we've been able to continue forward.
And can you tell us a little bit about the home and the children that stay
there? Yeah, the home is dedicated to children that are ill and whose parents do not have adequate resources for medical care. It's really a holding center. The children come from all over Peru because Peru, being a developing country, there's very little medical care, or at least sophisticated medical care in the rural areas. So if they need a pediatric cardiologist or a pediatric nephrologist, kidney specialist, then those are only in Lima. Lima is the center of Peru, actually. It has about 1/3 of the population of Peru. So we receive children from the outlying area. We do have a few children from Lima, but most of them come from the outlying areas that need specialized pediatric care. I'm a general pediatrician. So if a child comes in with a cardiac problem or heart problem, then I send them to the children's hospital. Same thing for the kidneys. Excuse me. Almost all of the specialties are represented at the children's hospital. We do get some children with leukemia, and there's a national cancer hospital. Eye problems, there's a national eye hospital. So they'll come into us, and then we'll decide where they need to go for continuing medical care. We don't charge the children anything. We do ask, just to keep the parents involved, we do ask the parents to help us with the education because the children go to school. So if the children, for example, need a certain amount of money for photocopies, or if they need a certain amount of money for a book or what have you, if the parents can't afford it, then we'll ask them to help us just to keep them involved, so that they don't think that we're taking over total care of their child. Once the child is well, the child has to return home. The home is not permanent, it's temporary. There's no time limit. We had one child with us for 15 years. Thankfully, family here in the United States took him on, and he's living with them now because he really had no other place to go when he achieved 18 years. So they go home. We try to keep up with them, although they go to very remote rural areas. Sometimes they will call us and tell us what's going on. If the child needs to return to us, of course, we'll accept the child. But for most of the children, we do lose contact with them once we've sent them home. And like I said, we don't charge anything except for help with education.
And all of the proceeds that are donated to the Hogar go specifically to the care of the children.
Right, exactly. We have 21 employees, 10 nurses, and we have cooks and laundresses, and of course, most of our that's our greatest expense, our salaries, because they are formally employed. They have a contract, they get health care, they get a pension fund, they get an unemployment fund, etc., which is very rare in Peru because only 30% of employees receive those benefits. 70% of employees don't get anything. They're paid under the table, usually the minimum wage, which I think is $360, something like that.